Welcome everybody that's here for the Get Set for Success practical tips and practical skills and tips for college. We'll wait a few minutes and let everybody get into the room, and then we'll start in about a minute or two. So please stay tuned. And if you're joining us, please make sure to mute your screen so that we don't hear you in the background. We're going to wait a few minutes. I see a few more people coming in, so we're going to wait a few more minutes. Again, please make sure you're muted so we don't hear the background noise. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and get started. This is a series about, go back one more, I'm sorry, Ann, just so yeah, thank you. So this is our Get Set for Success practical skills and tips for college, how I can keep healthy habits while juggling work and school. So we have two of us here today that will be presenting. My name is Lanie Dornier, and I am the director of the Kinesiology Program here at Tulane School of Professional Advancement. I'm actually entering my 31st year of teaching in higher education. I've worked at 3 different universities and currently here at Tulane University, and I've worked in the kinesiology field. My major area of interest is motor learning and sports psychology. So I teach classes both at the graduate level and the undergraduate level in research methods and statistics, sports psychology, sports sociology, and motor learning. And for those that don't know about motor learning, that's the one most people ask about. It's how we learn and acquire skills. So I've been involved in kinesiology and how to keep healthy habits and stay healthy for a long time, both personally and professionally. So welcome, and we're really happy to have you here.
Hi everyone, my name is Lauren Dunaway, and I'll also be sharing with you today. And I am a professor of practice in the kinesiology department within the School of Professional Advancement, as well as in the undergraduate public health program. I split my time between the two. I'm a registered dietitian by training, and I also have a master's degree and a PhD in public health. I wanted to let you know those things so you know the lens through which I'm sharing about nutrition today. I teach both undergraduate and graduate classes for SoPA that focus on nutrition and health equity. At the undergraduate level, I teach a nutrition and behavior course, which is an introductory nutrition course. And this summer, I'm also teaching global health as well. At the graduate level, I teach exercise and nutrition and health and disease, as well as a health equity and determinants course. My public health career before I became a professor of practice was focused on research, evaluation, and program development, with a wide range of topics, from neighborhood food access to racial disparities in birth outcomes to breastfeeding to social determinants of early childhood education. So a pretty wide span. And I've incorporated my RD, which stands for Registered Dietitian, in my work through trainings for childcare centers, menu review for schools and programs, and in the materials for programs and then the research projects I managed. I've been teaching college courses since about 2013, maybe a few years before. And teaching and mentoring students is one of my greatest passions. So I'm excited to share with you today both current and prospective students.
All right, thank you, Lauren. All right, so we'll start off talking about moving and exercising and how it helps when you're under pressure. This whole series is about students that are coming back to school. And we work with adult learners and traditional students. And sometimes when students come back to school, whether you're an adult learner, you might have a family, or you're juggling many jobs. And even if you're a traditional student, you're leaving home for the first time. And so sometimes coming back to school can be pressure, and you're in a new environment. And starting school, and going back to classes and the stress that comes with that, sometimes we end up changing our daily routines. And so one of the things that we know from research is that diet and exercise are two of the best ways to maintain a stable, healthy life. I'm going to talk to you a little bit about the moving and exercising part of it. What does moving and exercise do to help you when you're under pressure? From a scientific perspective, and we can talk about it from a physiological perspective. And if you take classes in the kinesiology program, we talk about things from a physiological perspective, a biological perspective, and a psychological perspective. And I'm going to try to hit on a little bit of all of those. So from a physiological perspective, what happens when we exercise is we increase the production of endorphins in our body. And endorphins are neurotransmitters in our brain. Some of you might have heard of people talking about a runner's high or an exerciser's high. That's actually from endorphins in our brain. So exercising is the way we produce more endorphins from a physiological perspective. And so if you're out there and you're thinking, well, that doesn't happen. When I exercise, I have to get ready for it and I don't really enjoy it. Well, you have to find an exercise that you enjoy. And so exercising isn't about doing something you don't like. It's finding a way to exercise that you're actually enjoying it and producing those endorphins that'll give you the physiological response. From a biomechanical perspective, exercising is also good because it's healthy for our body. In the biomechanics, we're talking about how our body moves, flexibility. And as we get older and as we age, one of the things that happen is we decrease the amount of muscles that are produced. Your muscles atrophy, they naturally atrophy. And we're talking about atrophy in muscles, we're talking about muscles decreasing in the number of muscle fibers. And so we need to do whatever we can at a young age, the younger the better, to produce muscle mass so that as we get older, it's developed. The core exercises are really important, and also being able to maintain balance. Core exercise and maintaining balance are two of the things that we lose as we get older. Now, one of the things that has come out of the research that I find interesting about moving and exercising and what it helps is that we really have been stuck on thinking about exercise and the amount of time that people stay active. We're talking about physical activity. How many minutes a day, how many hours a week are you staying active? There's some new research that's come out over the last decade or two that talks about physical inactivity. So not only do we need to be concerned about your physical activity and how long you're active, but how long are you inactive? How long are you sitting behind a desk? How long are you sitting on a couch? And measuring the amount of physical inactivity is also a very good predictor of health in the future. And so people that work at a desk, we're training them to do things like stand up when you make phone calls or when you're talking on the phone. Take the stairs instead of the escalator or the elevator whenever you can. Do the things that decrease the amount that increase the amount of physical activity, but also decrease the amount of physical inactivity. Why do we do this? Why does it help when we're under pressure? Because exercise can actually, research has shown, exercise can improve your mood, it can reduce anxiety, it can decrease depression. And one of the ways it does that is the psychological aspects of physical activity. When you're engaged in physical activity, it also is a release from thinking about the worries of the day and things that you're concerned about. And so I'll talk a little bit later, whether that activity is walking or running or swimming or bicycling. In general, when we're exercising, we're thinking about the exercise, or we're enjoying the outdoors, or we're thinking about the strokes that we're making as we're swimming. Sometimes that focused concentration on physical activity takes it away from worrying or the things that are causing you stress. It's almost as if exercising can be a way of meditation, as a type of meditation. And the more you practice focused exercising and meditating while you're exercising, or controlling your thoughts while you're exercising to think about the physical activity or think about the positive aspects of physical activity, or that you're enjoying the outdoors, the better you're going to be able to do it. It becomes more automatic for you. And so the last thing I'll tell you about moving and physically exercising is that you have to do it with intention. As with everything else in our life, physical activity and exercise doesn't just come naturally. When we think about how we spend our day, if we know we have to go to class, or we know we have to go to work, or we know we're going to eat lunch at 12 o'clock, we've made a committed effort for that exercise. The same thing has to happen, with that activity, the same thing has to happen with exercise. You need to be committed to so many minutes a day or so many minutes a week that you're going to be committed to exercising. And then lastly, find something you enjoy doing. If you don't enjoy running, then don't run. Find another exercise. Start with something you enjoy, like maybe it's walking, and maybe it's walking so that your heart rate isn't up as much. Maybe it's swimming, maybe it's cycling. Some people like exercising by themselves, so they enjoy walking by themselves in the park or in their neighborhood. Some people like doing it as a group activity. If you're a student at the university, they have many group activities that are available at universities, but also gyms have group activities, and sometimes even churches or recreational centers in a neighborhood. Check those out, because a lot of them will offer physical activity for a wide range of people and a wide range of capability levels. So I really encourage you to get out there, move and exercise, and enjoy those endorphins that you're producing in your brain. All right, Lauren, we'll do the next one.
All right. Thank you, Lanie. I learned something there too. And I will say, when I realized I could find an exercise that I loved, it was life-changing. So encourage everyone to do that. So my section is on healthy eating. And I want to first say that talking about this topic in our current climate might look a little different than it would a year ago or even 6 months ago. However, many of the principles are the same, and you can adapt them if you're working or learning from home or not. So I have 3 simple tips for you today when it comes to building and maintaining good nutrition habits. But before I do, I wanted to give one overarching suggestion, and this is going to go to anything related to nutrition or exercise that you hear today, and that's to try one habit at a time. What happens when we try to change everything all at once, especially when it comes to what we eat or how we move, we often don't succeed and we get frustrated. And so when we start small and choose one thing, for example, you want to drink more water every day. And then once that's a habit, you can add in other things. You're going to be more likely to stick to the changes. I also want to mention this, and I'll share this again at the end of my tips, but there's not a one-size-fits-all way to healthy eating, I'm sorry to say. So I'm not going to be sharing a list today of what you should and shouldn't eat. We all make different decisions about what's important to us to eat or not, but we know through research and practice that whole foods, no, not the grocery store, but whole foods with little or no processing, especially plant-based whole foods like fruits and vegetables, grains, nuts, and seeds, are full of vitamins and minerals and fiber, and they don't have things like added sugar or salt that we may be wanting to avoid. So there are numerous examples of how these foods benefit our physical and mental health. So just keep that in mind, and I will get started here with my tips. So tip number 1, similar to what Lanie was talking about with exercise, is planning out your meals for the week. I can't see everyone, but I know that there might be sighs or eye rolls on the other side of these screens, even people watching the recording. And believe me, I get it. I don't do this all the time either. But having a general plan or idea of what you're going to eat is going to help you stay on track. It's going to help you make the most of the groceries that you buy. You're going to end up saving money. And it's going to help you build healthier habits in the long run. It's so easy to eat things we may be trying to limit, for example, fast food, if we haven't planned and we're hungry and we want to need something fast. And now things, I don't know about you, but things like Uber Eats and DoorDash, and we can have all these things just delivered right to our house. So as our schedules are changing and they're looking different than they used to, I still like to plan out about 3 or 4 dinner meals that I'll cook for the week and then expect leftovers. And another thing, if you have leftover produce at dinner, you can throw it in a scramble in the morning for breakfast. Some people, when it comes to meal planning, they like to eat the same thing every day for breakfast or lunch. That I don't personally like that, and I think you can add a lot of variety in other ways, but you can have a couple of options. So some people get really over frustrated if they try to plan everything they're going to eat every day, and that I don't personally recommend that, but I like to have options that I can choose from, and you'll figure out what works for you. Lanie she's already talked about this, and she'll probably talk about it again. We're sitting so much more than we used to, and our schedules might be off. And so taking just a little bit of time to think through the foods that you want to have readily available, which I'm going to talk about next, is going to help you maintain these habits. And a bonus tip in this category, when you're at the grocery store, try to stick to the perimeter of the store. You might not have noticed this before, but produce and fresh meat and fresh dairy is all on the perimeter, and the majority of what's in the aisles is processed. Obviously, there are exceptions, but that's just a tip to think about. So number 2 is to prepare and place healthy options for snacks. So I'm going to stick with the letter P theme here, but these 2 are super important. When we're hungry, we're going to grab what's easiest. So preparing fruits and vegetables by going ahead and washing or cutting them can go a long way. And the same thing with putting servings of nuts or dried fruit into smaller containers, or even having something like overnight oats in pre-prepared jars are just going to help you out. You don't have to do all these things. There's not a checklist to food prep that you have to follow, but think about the foods that you want to eat more of, similar to exercise. Think about what you want to eat more of and the foods that you enjoy, and think about ways to make it easier on yourself. So what do I mean about place? Again, when we're hungry or on the go or stuck at home and stressed and trying to work and learn and take care of kids, just a hypothetical example, we want the easiest, closest thing. So where you place foods that you're trying to eat more of that are easier to access, you're going to be more likely to choose them. So this might look like having produce out on the counter, or snacks like nuts and seeds or nut butters or veggie chips or turkey sticks or something in the front of the pantry. The most extreme version of this is not having snacks or treats in your house that you're trying to avoid. I think all foods have a place in our eating patterns, which we'll talk about next, but know yourself and think about how what you have available in your fridge or your pantry or on your counter impacts the habits that you're trying to change. My third point today is probably something that might be new to some of you watching, and it's perceive emotional eating. Originally, I had recognized emotional eating, but I had to keep with my theme. Emotional eating is a complex topic, and I can point you to more resources if you're interested today, but I want to mention a few key things. Emotional eating is simply defined as eating to feel better or relieve stress. And I think most of us can identify with that right now, with everything that's going on in the world and in our neighborhoods and in our homes. And emotional eating is something that dietitians and other nutrition experts traditionally teach people to avoid. And there isn't a time and place for that. But I also want to bring up today that it highlights the fact that food can be a great comfort to us, and a lot of times that can be a good thing. So we often categorize foods into healthy or unhealthy. And to tell you the truth, those are really based on how they're connected to our weight and how they're connected to chronic disease. But I just want to challenge that a little bit today, because food can be beneficial for our mental health. It's a huge part of our culture and our heritage. And there's just so many other benefits. But I wanted to give you just a few tips today to recognize emotional eating, especially during these times. And then this can certainly carry on, hopefully, when we are all in different places. So when you are feeling overwhelmed or sad or stressed, this actually kind of ties in really well to what Lanie was sharing, and I didn't even know that she was going to share this, but practicing the power of the pause, so similar to kind of paying attention to how you're feeling when you're working out. Take a deep breath, maybe have a glass of water, ask your body what he, she, they wants, and listen. And it may be that you really don't want to eat a whole bag of chips in that moment, or maybe you do. Believe me, I've been there. It may be that you need a full meal or that you were just thirsty. It also may mean that you do want to eat that piece of peach cobbler because it reminds you of your grandmother and you want to feel comforted in that moment. So I just want to share this concept of emotional eating because I just think we need to take care of our whole selves before we change any of this. So there's so much more I could talk about. And like I mentioned, we all have different values when it comes to our food and what's important. For example, some people try to eat meat and others don't, or animal products, or is organic important and whatnot. So there's not a one size fits all way to be quote unquote healthy, but we can all use these tips to help shape our habits and to increase our likelihood of eating those whole plant-based foods instead of processed foods. And that'll benefit us in the long run. So I'll turn it back over to Lanie, and then I'll be available at the end for any questions.
Thanks, Lauren. So Lauren gave you a good background about nutrition, and we've talked a little bit about moving and exercise. I just want to finish this series with a little bit of information about physical fitness and how to manage it when time is short, and some of the most important principles about physical fitness. So when we want to be physically fit, what does that mean to be physically fit? And there are a lot of different ways we can evaluate our physical fitness. And there's some scientific ways like measuring your VO2 max. And your VO2 max is the amount of oxygen that you can take in and carbon dioxide that you produce. So people that are highly physically fit can take in more oxygen, they take in more and produce less CO2. They're very efficient in their use of oxygen in their system. But there are other ways that we can measure our fitness too, ways that you and I can measure it without having to go into a research lab to have our VO2 max tested. And so a basic principle in physical fitness, which some of you may have heard about, is called the FIT principle, F-I-T-T. And this is a great principle to learn more about and to use when you really want to start engaging in physical fitness and become physically fit. The FIT principle, F-I-T-T, F stands for frequency. How often do you want to work out? And most of the research shows that at a minimum, we want to work out at least 3 times a week for 30 minutes each time. That can go up or down depending on what type of exercise you're doing and some other things related to the FIT principle. But as a basic guideline, think about trying to exercise at least 3 times a week for 30 minutes. That's frequency. And again, you might want to work out more frequently and you might want to work out longer each time, but frequency is how often you work out, 3 times a week. Intensity is how hard you're going to work out. So intensity is often judged by our heart rate. And so anybody that has these new types of watches or even on our phones that measure how much we exercise, it's typically using our heart rate as an indicator of exercise. And so when we look at heart rate, we have a target heart rate zone that you want to exercise in. Your target heart rate zone is based on your maximum heart rate and then the percentage of that maximum heart rate that you want to work in. So for example, our max heart rate is 220 minus your age. So let's say you're 25 years of age. Your maximum heart rate would be 220 minus 25, that's your age. So your max heart rate is 195. You don't want your heart rate to get above 195. And you actually want to work in a zone that's a percentage of that. You might, if you want to work at a high intensity, you might want to work at 70 to 90% of 195, which would be about 136 to 176, your heart rate. If you want a moderate heart rate, you might want to work at 50 to 60% of your maximum heart rate. So if your maximum heart rate is 195, 50 to 60% would be to exercise with your heart rate about 98 to 117. So you can judge that. Some of the things you can do to trick it is if you're a walker and you really enjoy walking, maybe you jog a little bit to get your heart rate up and then walk. And then when the heart rate goes down, you jog a little bit more to get your heart rate up and then walk. Because remember, you want to do something you enjoy. So we've got frequency, we've got intensity. The first T stands for time. How long are you going to exercise? So if we said the frequency was 3 times a week, the time is 30 minutes each exercise session. So it might be a 30-minute session. Maybe you don't have time for a 30-minute session. Even a 20-minute session 3 times a week is better than not exercising at all. You can just exercise at a higher frequency during those shorter intervals so that your heart rate is getting up very quickly and you're getting the maximum from that exercise bout. And then the second T, the FIT, the second T is type. What type of exercise are you going to do? Excuse me. There's basically 2 types of exercise. You can do cardio, which gets your heart rate up, jogging, swimming, bicycling. Those are cardio exercises. Or you can do strength training exercises, like doing with the bands they have now. You can buy the bands at any store, dumbbells, machines. So some of this you can even do at home. Somebody said, well, I can't go to the gym. That means I can't work out anymore. You can still work out at home. Be creative. You can take water jugs and fill them up with halfway full of water or all the way full of water to make them heavier, or fill them with sand or fill them with rocks. You can do things so that you can do strength training at home. So think about those 4: frequency, intensity, time, and type when you're thinking about doing physical fitness. All right, I'm going to stop there. We'll move to the last slide.
All right, everyone, thank you so much for joining us today. And those of you that will watch the recording later, we appreciate you making time to come and learn with us. If you have any questions for us, either about exercise or nutrition, you can use the chat box right now, and we will be on here for a few minutes to answer any questions that you may have. You can also contact us through the ways listed on the slide here. You can contact us by phone. SoPA is also on Twitter, and we also have a Facebook page. If you go to the SoPA, which stands for the School of Professional Advancement, for anyone watching who didn't know that, the sopa.tulane.edu website, you can find a profile for both Dr. Dornier and myself, and you can email us that way, or you can also email the Ask SoPA, ASKSOPA @tulane.edu email, and they will forward it to us. So we will wait for just a few minutes to see if there are any questions in the chat box. And thank you again so much for joining us today.
Yep, everybody, thank you very much for joining us. And it looks like we don't have any questions. So thank you, and everybody have a wonderful day. Bye.